term in what we're doing. That doesn't mean we're going to be perfect. That doesn't mean we're going to all of a sudden stop sinning. That doesn't mean that we're all of a sudden going to be, the perfection of what it means to be a Muslim. Quite the opposite. Being a grassroots organizer, being an activist is something that's going to directly challenge everything that you believe in. It's going to directly challenge everything that your environment, your surroundings, it's going to challenge your iman. So it is so critical that you start from a precipice of trying to obtain that strong foundation in the deen. Most importantly, your niyyah. Most importantly, your niyyah. And Sister Dunya touched on this, but I cannot emphasize enough, securing your niyyah for why you're doing any type of activism work, that if you're not doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will not be successful. You may have successes, but you will not be successful overall. And you'll notice, and I'm speaking from, I'm vulnerable in front of you as somebody who is not a scholar, not very knowledgeable, and somebody who is completely imperfect. You will notice the second that your niyyah diverts to where it shouldn't be, you will notice it in your own manifestations of the work that you're doing. Not only yourself in the state of your heart, etc., but you will notice it even, in the work that you're doing. So I really can't emphasize enough the importance of establishing your niyyah to do this work only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but also to please revisit that over and over and over, daily, multiple times a day. Why am I doing this? I'm going to walk through a few steps. I'll highlight the steps that I'm going to talk about. We're going to talk about who is your favorite activist. I encourage you to think about women. We automatically usually think about men, which is not a bad thing. But I encourage you to think about strong female figures also when you're considering this. What does it take to be an activist? What does it mean to empower other women, which is the essence of why we're talking today? To empower each other, to find ways to be more active. We will talk a little bit about men, so I will ask you to have patience with me. We will have a frank conversation about men from a respectful standpoint, because it's a dynamic that affects Muslim women in our community. And I will also, talk more generally about activism as a whole. So starting off, who has the microphone? Sister, did somebody keep it? Yes? Okay, great. If you can, shout it out, or the sister has a microphone if you'd like to share it. But who are some of our favorite activists? Is this a hand or just an adjustment of clothing? Sister Rafia? Helen Keller, subhanAllah. Why is she your favorite activist? So she personifies kind of a whole package. She works for humanity, but she also does so without concern for external appearances, without concern for what other people are thinking, and clearly, she's not operating or engaging with people because of their external appearances. So I can understand why that would be. What other inspirations? And please, this really is not a brothers shutout session. This is an all of us session. So. All of us included in saying something. Do we have other people who just empower you? Yes, right back there, and then I'll take you, sister. Who? Mother Teresa? MashaAllah, why is Mother Teresa?
She dedicated her whole life.
Yeah, subhanAllah.
To do that, and her intention was to just please God.
Subhanallah. Oh, so you meant Mother Teresa. So 2 for Mother Teresa, subhanallah. Oh, didn't you have one though, sister? Oh, okay, she actually had one, so, but that's okay, it's okay. Go ahead and we'll come back.
Well, for me personally,
Rosa Parks, Allahu Akbar.
dynamic, uh, the struggle for people of color.
Absolutely.
So, you know, she
Absolutely.
will always be my role model.
Absolutely.
You
And
know?
with one act.
With one act.
She kept it going, but it was that one act
Yep.
that determined the platform.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And so-
All it takes. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always is reinforcing, do not belittle even the smallest act. You think, you know, just sitting there on the bus and not standing up, it doesn't seem like a big deal. But
was
it created waves.
It was back then.
It was back
It
then,
really was,
absolutely.
you know, and
Absolutely.
you know, for me personally, I wouldn't experience what I have today without the sacrifices and struggle of the people back then.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
this was real for us, and it's still real.
It's
It's still real for us.
very true.
You
Very
know?
true.
The struggle is still on. It's still continuing.
And that's why we have to have these frank conversations. Okay, I'll take one more. Who do we got? Somebody is passionate about saying it, maybe back here.
One activist that really inspires me is Angela Davis for her unapologetic blackness,
Yes.
her sticking to her guns with her political views, and
Yeah.
I really admire her.
If you actually Google female activists, her and Gloria Steinem are the first 2 that show up, and it's, you know, the very loud and proud Angela Davis that we think of, and also with Gloria Steinem, it's those figures who are extremely dynamic, and even quietly dynamic like Mother Teresa was. Absolutely, right on with that. Oh. No, okay. She knows me, and this is not here for that. Now that's one of my girls, so yes, absolutely. She's not here, so we can gloat about her all we want to. Allahu Akbar. Okay, so moving on, what does it take to be an activist? What do these women personify that we're thinking of? They personify strength. They personify grace. They don't have to be quiet and meek to personify grace. Like, we think of grace, we think of Mother Teresa, right? We think of that quiet, understated power and elegance. But we also think of grace with Rosa Parks, her quiet dignity and power. Angela Davis, her loud dignity and power, her unapologetic blackness, as the sister put it. These are important characteristics. For a Muslim, the number one characteristic of being an activist has to be your sincerity. Has to be your sincerity. It has to be divine motivation. When we're talking about doing this work, it has to come from a place of sincerity. Otherwise, you're just seeking fame. Otherwise, you're just seeking recognition. Sister Dunya said this to us in a very beautiful way in terms of our deen. But think about it in terms of just you engaging with society. If you're not sincere about what you're doing, it's gonna come across. I guarantee you. You've met people before who get up there and they're just like, you know, talking about themselves and how great they are and how, you know, wonderful the work it is that they're doing, and me, and I. What about the work? What about the mission? If you take away anything that I say today, take that away. Your sincerity and your push for the mission is what's absolutely essential to be an effective grassroots organizer, activist, spokesperson, you name it. Because what happens? What happens if you walk away and it is person-centric, it's individualistically centered on your life, your work? What happens when you walk away? It's gone. The work is gone. Rosa Parks was a spoke in a wheel of a movement, and she knew that, and she understood that. That's why when she did her part, she kept going from behind the scenes. She kept working behind the scenes because it was mission-centric, right? If somebody walks away from the mission, if your goal is to gain, glory and satisfaction for yourself, then when you're gone, the mission fizzles. And then what were you really doing there to begin with? That's going to be on your record with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's going to be what is accounted for you. Sure, you did great work. Sure, you made impact and change, and maybe there's some resonance with other people and some residual effect. But the mission dies. I'll give you an example, and I'll call out one of the biggest figures. With two of the biggest figures, with Dr. Martin Luther King and with Malcolm X both. Not that they were doing this for their own gain. I'm not making assumptions there. But we put so much on those two people. If we're just, there was a lot more. But we think about civil rights, we think about Martin Luther King, we think about, from a Muslim perspective, Malcolm X. But when they're gone, can anybody tell me that it did not fizzle a bit when they left? Because we glorified individuals. We made statues and portraits and etc. Individuals have to be removed. It has to be sincerely for your sake. Now, don't be naive enough to think that people don't engage with other people. People engage with other people. Building relationships is critical. Having faces and spokespersons for organizations is critical. But your mission as a grassroots organizer has to start with sincerity and divine motivation by pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Second, you have to actually have a fire inside you to do this work. You can do a little bit if you got a little bit of burning inside, a little bit. You're like, I want to do something, but not too big. But to be an actual activist, to be a grassroots organizer, it has to be a hot, burning fire. Why? Somebody tell me why it has to be a hot, burning fire inside you. Huh? So it can keep going. Because people will try to throw water on that all day long. All day, every day. They will try to sit there and stifle you and put you down and put that fire out as best they can, any way that they can. And if that fire is not burning hot enough so that when they try that, it burns the living daylights out of them, you won't be able to keep going. So that fire, if you have that fire within you, you know you're probably getting ready or ready to become an activist, ready to become something or somebody who works for a particular mission. As long as the mission is something that is geared towards the preservation of this deen, geared towards pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and bettering your community, the sky's the limit on what you can do. I'm not here to get up and talk only about social justice and civil rights, etc. I'm here to encourage you to not be apathetic. Whatever you do, don't be apathetic. I don't care if you want to be an advocate for black seed chewing gum. Because everything in Islam, like we think of food stuff, it's always black seed and honey, right? So if you're like, black seed honey, or black seed chewing gum, this is the wave of the future, this is going to improve all of our lives, I don't care. I'm just saying that because I think that's kind of a small thing and I might make fun of it, but if that is if you have fire about black seed chewing gum, you go for that, right? You force it on everybody that you know. Okay, don't force it on people. But you try to encourage people as best you know how. Up to some of the loftier goals of trying to do civil rights and social justice and all those kind of things. Of course, I hold that in high regard. That's my day job. That's my fire. That's what I love to do. So alhamdulillah. I'm not trying to belittle black seed chewing gum, but maybe a little bit. Collective responsibility in representing others, but also yourself, whether you like it or not. You have to internalize this, unfortunately. Why do I say unfortunately? Because people like, I want to be my myself, I'm tired of representing my entire ummah no matter what. I'm tired of being, an ambassador for Islam when I walk out of the door, especially the sisters and the brothers who visibly look Muslim when they go out the door, or sisters or brothers who may represent through their name or through the color of their skin or what have you. You represent it whether you like it or not. Internalizing and accepting that is really important, but also finding your voice within is just as important. We talked about, did everybody know what Sister Dunya was talking about in the situation regarding, does anybody not know what she was talking about? So, do you know about the Playboy article that came out? Okay, there was an article that came out, supposedly, a magazine that is known for publishing nude photos, graphic displays objectifying women, has supposedly restructured, rebranded, and they're not doing that anymore. And so they wanted to have this empowerment women's issue, and one of the women featured in it was a muhajjaba who is working in journalism. So that's what she was talking about. And a lot of people are slandering. A lot of people are defaming. The best quote I saw, there was two. One from Dani Mugaki, who explained, which is in essence what Dunya said up here, but also to remember for our own selves how to view this. Because a lot of people are saying, and I think that maybe where your question was coming from was, is that okay? Are we, maybe that wasn't, but is that okay? Are we allowed to do that kind of stuff? Number one, number two, Hina Zubairi said something that I think perfectly summed up. She said, in the process of normalizing Islam, make sure you don't normalize shaitan. In the process of normalizing Islam, make sure you don't normalize shaitan. Does that give us the authority to go and trash and bash and defame a young Muslim woman? This is a woman who is devoted to her deen. This is a woman who made a choice, and I'm sure it was a very deep, sincere choice that she made from whatever her frame of reference was. Right or wrong, we don't have the right to defame her. But we can also think critically as Muslims, how do we navigate this society? How do we navigate this very hyper-sexualized, hyper-aggressive, hyper-profane society that we live in? In the process of normalizing Islam, make sure you don't normalize shaitan. That is for your own self, your own nafs benefit. Because in the end, you tear it all away, it's between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Sister Dunya said, the ultimate judge. But the collective responsibility, understanding that you represent your ummah when you go out the door, especially as an activist, you have to internalize and accept that. But find your own unique voice within that. Find something new to contribute. Don't see what other people are doing. Don't see Linda Sarsour up here and you see her and you're like, I love that girl. I'm gonna go be just like her. I can't tell you how many times young women with such good intentions come up and say to me, I want to be just like you when I grow up. I don't want them to be like me. I'm full of problems. But I have my own voice. I want them to be like them when they grow up. I want them to show the world what they have to offer. So find your unique voice within that collective responsibility and share something new with the world, whatever that voice is. Balance. This is something I have not obtained, so I will not stand up here and act like I am some expert on balance. Balance is an elusive thing for me, but I try. I try very hard. It's something that you have to constantly work at, constantly seek. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam always teach us that balance and the middle path is the way. Sirat al-Mustaqim is the way. Finding balance in what you do. Speaking specifically to the females in this room, it is very difficult with the current structure of our ummah and the current sociological understanding of our family structure. It is very difficult for women to be in this work. The way we have things set up, it's much easier as American women overall, but it is still very difficult. In our community alone, I'm one of a handful of female leaders who are prominently out there speaking. A handful, compared to a basket, a bushel of men. I have been in countless meetings where I am literally the only woman in the room. So finding that balance of how you engage, finding that balance of your identity, not compromising your identity as a female, whatever that looks like, whether you wear hijab, whether you don't wear hijab, doesn't, external, internal, all of those things, you need to be authentically yourself, but you also need to find the boundaries and understand when in Rome, you have to be respectful to your surroundings. You challenge cultural norms that are outdated or not working. Cultural norms. I didn't say Islamic norms. You challenge cultural norms that are outdated and not meant for our community. But at the same time, you can also respect. Who am I speaking to when I say this? I have a lot of sisters who come up to me and they're like, forget all of these men and their rules, forget all of these people and how we're doing things. I want to do it like this, I want to do it like that. That's great if you want to be one of those people who helps us move forward as a community responsibly. But when you're just trying to, trying to push the boundaries or rock the boat because you think it's fun or your own nefs is encouraging you to do that, I caution you. I caution you to make sure that you're respectful to your own community. You're respectful to your brothers in this deen. You're respectful to your sisters in this deen. That we're trying to do this work, you have to understand where the community's at in different points, in different stages, and in different groups. You have to understand what masajid you're going into. You have to understand what their cultural norms are, what their, implementation of their Islamic roles and responsibilities are. We're as diverse as it comes when it comes to Islam and representing. Overall, we have a common thread. But from masjid to masjid, you know that there's masjid you go into and you say, oh, that's the really conservative masjid. Oh, that's the super liberal masjid. We've identified masjids like this. This is not something like you should be ashamed about. It's common, it's factual, this is how it is. But be smart and understand when you're going into there. You don't compromise your own. You don't compromise yourself. But you be respectful to who you're speaking to. You be respectful to your audience and understand that. I'm going to say this because I think it's obligatory to say this. I hope it's not something that needs to be said. But your family has rights upon you. This is something I have to constantly remind myself. As a married female in this community, but also as a daughter, also as a sister, and also as a friend even. Your family has rights upon you. When you're doing this type of work, the mission is not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes first. Your family comes second. And maybe then the mission. Understand that the family comes first. If your family dynamic is set up as such, where you're not infringing upon anybody's rights in order to do this work, then by all means. But I remind myself first, and I remind you, that your family has rights upon you. So be conscious of them when you're engaging in this type of work, and don't place a burden on them that you shouldn't. Reiterating what Sister Dunya said, knowledge and experience. One time I was sitting in an audience and there was a speaker up there, and one of my friends sitting next to me said, ooh, I want a question. I want to ask a question. And I said, okay, what do you want to ask? She said, I have no idea. I said, then why are you going to ask a question? She goes, I just want to hear them talk and respond to me. That made absolutely no sense whatsoever. She did that like 2 or 3 times with me. I was like, you gotta stop. She just wants to engage. She just wants, I don't know if she wants to hear herself talk, or she just wants to hear the other person talk to them like she said, but she just wanted to ask a question. Come on now. And probably people are laughing in this room because they're like, I totally did that one time. I just wanted to hear what they had to say, and for them to talk at me and look at me, that would be great. And the chef said, when you want to speak, don't. When you want to speak, don't. But when you don't want to speak, you probably should. And for those of us, like myself, who tend to talk incessantly, that is a big reminder for me, and that is something I hang on to very dearly. So remember that when you're speaking. Knowledge and experience, when you want to talk, you probably shouldn't. When you don't want to talk, you probably should. Stamina is really important. Having a very hard head and thick skin does not hurt. Now, you have to have a soft enough head to be flexible with other people, but hard enough to persevere when you know you have to. I say that in a very positive sense, not a negative hard head sense. I want to, before I speak about brothers, I want to touch on empowering sisters, empowering women. It is, and at the risk of exposing ourselves openly and knowingly to the brothers in the room, it is very common, and I've seen it over and over, that sisters will quickly attempt to tear each other down. Swiftly and immediately try to tear each other down. Please find the women around you and work to empower them. It will not take anything away from their risk because it can't. This is the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever is ordained for you is ordained for you. So let your record show that you empowered your sister and didn't hold her back. And you're not a bad person if you find yourself trying to hold somebody back. You're just a human being. But please, it does not take anything from a candle to light another flame. If you've ever done that, you ever lit another candle from another candle? That candle burns as bright or brighter. Have you ever tipped over a candle to light another candle and you notice that the wax drips out? It makes space for the wick. And the candle ends up burning brighter as a result. So when you're there to light the other flame, know that it will not take anything from you. It's very similar to the concept of giving sadaqah and of course giving zakat, but giving sadaqah in Islam never decreases our wealth. You must operate from a mindset of abundance instead of a mindset of scarcity. We're all trying to have our own piece of the pie. We're all trying to keep stuff for ourselves. We're all trying to prop up our own organizations and our own families and our own whatever. Stop it. Prop up your sister. Do not make space for her. If you're in a room and you see she's getting shut down, make space for her. And that'll lead me to the discussion on men. And this is a very positive discussion. I love my brothers in Islam in this community. I've encountered brothers who have tried to hold me back, but overwhelmingly, especially the leaders in this community, are absolutely supportive of our sisters. I'm not saying that's across the board, but overwhelmingly, we have a great support system of brothers in this community. I'll give you another example. In one of those male-only gatherings that I was sitting in, as a leader in the community, if the brothers were talking and talking and talking and they forgot that I was sitting there, which happened a lot, there were always brothers who say, Sister Alia, this is spoken, be quiet, and would make space for me. That doesn't mean you sit there and Where's my Muslim male allies? Where are you? Speak up for me. No, you still have to push your own agenda. You still have to speak powerfully and strongly, but lean on your brothers. Don't see them as enemies. Don't see them as somebody don't automatically go into it. Sisters, we have a little bit of a conflict, a little bit of a complex with our brothers sometimes. Don't go into it like that. Go into it thinking the best of them. Go into looking to develop a good halal relationship with your Muslim brothers who are I started to say co-conspirators. That makes it sound so mischievous. Who are co-conspirators in this work. Sometimes you feel like you're conspiring, I'll be honest. But who are colleagues in this work, don't go into it thinking that they're against you. Go into it expecting the best. And oftentimes you will be greatly pleased. It's important for you to know that we do need male allies. We do need male voices in this room. Find those opportunities to push for those good discussions. That's why we have modesty in Islam, is so that we can have appropriate interactions with our brothers without fear of compromising our own dignity and our own modesty. Make sure that you never compromise that in your interactions, in your relationships. But understand that it's a natural part of engaging when you have to. Now, speaking specifically about speaking in mixed gatherings, I'm not sharing my own words or a fatwa per se. I'm sharing what Sheikh Abdul Nasser Jangda told me. We were in a public speaking workshop. That was for brothers and sisters. Is this better? I'm sorry. That was for brothers and sisters. And the concept of, can women speak in front of mixed audiences? Of course, if there are scenarios where somebody feels uncomfortable, somebody feels like it's not appropriate for them, there's not a need. But oftentimes we have females who are experts in our fields, who are competent and qualified to speak and should be given the platform. And he said unequivocally, there is no problem with females as long as you observe your deen and as long as you observe your Islamic prescriptions of modesty when interacting. There's absolutely no problem with females speaking to mixed audiences. Sheikh Omar has repeated this to me on multiple occasions and has done a lot to uplift women in this community. So understand that you have two and more very prominent scholars in our community who are uplifting those voices. Imam Zia is one of them. Sheikh Khalil is one of them. Imam Nadim from Epic is one of them. These are prominent, knowledgeable scholars who have given you the floor. So take it. Jazakum Allahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would love, if you have a few questions, I'll take about 3 questions if there are any. Yes, go ahead. It's better so that I can hear you, that'd be great.
Okay. So as activists, we have to stand up against like all forms of oppression, correct?
Absolutely.
But what happens when, say, that oppression doesn't correlate or connect with like Islam? So like you believe that the LGBT community doesn't deserve to be oppressed, or that women should have the right to like wear what they want and do what they want. Like you make that conscious decision that like I'm gonna cover because this is what I believe in.
Right.
But you shouldn't be oppressed because of what you believe. So how do you balance those two things of like, this is what I believe, but you shouldn't be oppressed for what you believe in?
So I'm not going to share my own words. I'll share what I've learned from Sheikh Omar in this process. He's served as a guiding light in these sensitive areas. We have an orthodox about Islam. We have a way of practicing our deen, but doing it with compassion and standing up against injustice is essential. That's something that goes hand in hand with being a Muslim. So we also do not have compulsion in our religion. I cannot compel you to do something. I cannot compel somebody to stop doing something. We, in the example of our Prophet ﷺ, are messengers. I mean, not messengers in the Islamic sense, but we give the information and then let people decide. Now, when it comes to standing up against violence, when it comes to standing up against oppression, It doesn't matter if the person is doing something inappropriate in front of you. If somebody goes to beat that person unlawfully, to harm them physically, you must do what you can to stand up against that. Nothing about any person's identity, bluntly speaking, the Pulse shooting in Orlando, nothing. I spoke at the Resource Center in Dallas with Sheikh Omar. It was an organization that is devoted to doing work for that community. We spoke to say we do not stand for what happened. Does that mean we align with their principles and their ways of life? No. Our deen is very clear on that. But uplifting a human being, protecting a human being, has nothing to do with their private life. We can teach what Islam says and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. That book is closed. That book is closed on what Allah teaches us about that. But we can stand up for justice for everybody. And the justice that is spoken, like Sister Dunya said, is not just for Muslimin. This is for all people. So there could be somebody doing something that's even worse than that. You don't know, just because they don't identify themselves as living in such a manner. So there's no problem standing up next to somebody who identifies this way and saying, that is not okay what happened in Orlando. Our executive director in Orlando spoke very forcefully out against that. There are ways that we can work. For example, there's a huge problem of school bullying in high school, middle school and high school students here in Texas against Muslim community members, minorities of color, and also of members who identify themselves from the LGBTQ community. There are ways that we can work towards justice without affirming those choices or that way of life as they identify it with. So just remember to delineate what's what, right? Compassionate orthodoxy. Yes, I'll take 2 more questions if you have them.
How do you deal with a lot of when you expose yourself? How do you deal with a lot of criticism, leg pulling, or sometimes hurtful comments? How do you deal with that?
For the most part, I try to ignore that kind of stuff. I mean, I get enough good criticism from those around me, and I ask for good criticism from those around me so that I can get sincere advice. But people who put you on blast publicly, people who sit there and want to shame you like what they've done to Noor about this magazine issue, why would you listen to that? Like, it still hurts, and I seek support and guidance from people. One of my good friends is in this audience, and I cry on a regular basis to her. On a regular basis. Poor girl, like, to be my friend is not an easy thing. I'm just gonna let you guys know this right now. It's not an easy thing, because I'm always like boo-hooing about how somebody hurt my feelings. But I try not to listen to that kind of stuff. And I set my connections to the world in such a way that I try to protect my private life as much as possible while still being accessible to individuals. Yeah, absolutely. Support system is absolutely critical. We'll take 1 more question over here. Or did we have somebody before that? This is the one I saw. I saw this young lady.
Assalamu alaikum and jazakallah khair. So how can we get involved with organizing here, perhaps with CAIR, your organization, or other organizations locally working to end a lot of this oppression?
Sure. So depending on what it is that you want to do, if you're interested in civil rights and social justice, our website is, I'm just shamelessly plugging it up here, cair-dfw.org, and there's a section on get involved or act or something like that, and you fill out a volunteer request form. That way we can respond to you and call you in for doing some of this type of work. Follow us on social media, follow me on social media, and stay involved and engage with what's going on. If you're interested in humanitarian relief work, dawah work, what have you, a lot of good organizations, Islamic Relief, ICNA, and right here at ICI, they have some really great programs as well. So just I think the first thing is finding what is your passion, what do you want to do, and then reaching out. right? So decide, what do you want to contribute your time to? How much time do you want to contribute and in what way? And then reach out to them and be persistent. For a long time, I didn't have anybody in the office with me. And I get probably 50 to 100 emails, just work emails a day. Trying to get through all of those is oppressive in and of itself. So sometimes I wouldn't always get to those volunteer requests, and frankly, there's probably a pile of them I've never even seen before. But the ones who got in were the ones who emailed me multiple times, siphoned my cell phone off of please don't do that, but I have a business card, I'll give it to you. You know, got my cell phone somehow, Facebook messaged me, did whatever they had to do, and I was like, okay, this person's really serious. So that showed me their initiation. So whatever organization you do that with, be persistent about it if you want it. Don't take it as a sign of they don't want you. We're overwhelmed and inundated in the Muslim community with work. So just be, you know, persistent and find whatever way you can to get in there. Yeah. Jazakumullahu. I'm sorry? I have had a youth intern as young as 15 years old. I wouldn't go below that for internships. So summer internships for high school age students is absolutely an option. We also have youth development programs. One that's coming in 2017 is Muslim Youth Leadership Symposium. We're going to take students down to Austin, and they're going to do mock Senate and mock House of Representatives with a little bit of other grassroots activism and organizing. I'll get to you in just one second. And then we have just general, you know, we always reach out to youth to do volunteering opportunities. Sure. Yes, really quickly.
What would we do if we intern, and how do you apply for the internship?
So same, cair-dfw.org. If you go to the ACT section, it has an internship tab, and you can see what the different internships that we have available and the time frames of which we're accepting applications. So come November, we're going to start interviewing for the winter semester and the spring semester. And so we'll have opportunities available. It's a minimum of, I think it's 15 to 20 hours, depending on what your workload is for school. And we can do formal and informal internships, whether it's tied to your university's curricula or it is something that you're doing in your own free time. So it's, you know, we're flexible on both of those fronts. The last thing I want to say before I leave and I have to run is that, please, I said this at the beginning in response to a question, but I say it again. The biggest problem we have about defending Muslims in this community against hate and oppression is that we don't know what's happening. People are not reporting it. Even if it's something we can't do anything about, like somebody yelled at you in the street, report that to me. Let me know what the level is. We're going to be launching a Report Hate campaign in November also to try and encourage Muslims to report the instances of hate. And if we can do something about it, we will. And if we can't, we will let you know. And also save the date for January 31st. We'll have Texas Muslim Capital Day in Austin. Everybody's invited to come down and engage with their elected representatives. So
جزاكم الله خير.